Hello, everybody. Welcome to a little project that I've been working on for a while, trying to get going. So this is kind of like a test run. So for those of you tuning in and going to listen today, we have a few guests on the show as well. But for those of you tuning in, this is something that I've been working on. We're going to see how it goes because I do know what I'm doing, but in essence, I don't. So working with some studio design here and everything, and hopefully going to the end goal is to bring a show to you guys per week, where something unique in the NASCAR industry, something where we're gonna have a lot of great guests on this show in the future, in the off season especially. We don't have too much going on in the off season. There's still some racing, there's still some stuff to watch, there's still some stuff for people to do. There's football and basketball and everything like that. We got the Snowball Derby coming up. We got the Rolex 24 in January, and you know what? Before we even know it, before we even can fathom that we're in the off season, it's going to be next season already. So we'll see. But welcome everybody to the Motor Stardom show. It was a incredible, fun, unpredictable 2024 season. And now we're going to be looking towards 2025. But there are so many things that happened during the 2024 season that we're going to talk about. Obviously, championship weekend. We got David Hayes from ESPN Northwest Florida on the show today at 1 o'clock. That's going to be a lot of fun because usually I go on his show on ESPN Northwest Florida on Mondays. But today we're going to swap the roles a little bit, and he's going to come on here with myself. So, and then after that, we'll have Chris Gollin as well on the show later at 1:30 for some announcements to do with this page. And then 1:50, we're going to have a fun announcement that has something to do with an event this winter that we've had going on for the last 5 years. Well, this will be the 6th annual. And it has to do with all of you guys. So that's going to be a lot of fun to do and to talk about as well. So, like I said, welcome to the Motor Stardom show. Let's talk about some Phoenix a little bit. Obviously, we're coming out of championship weekend where we had Joey Logano winning the Cup Series championship. He is now a 3-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. We have Justin Allgaier, who was able to win his first Xfinity Series championship for him and Junior Motorsports. And then we have over on the Truck Series side, Ty Majeski, short track legend, late model legend, a guy that has fought and clawed for kind of just that opportunity right in NASCAR. He finally gets it a few years ago with ThorSport Racing, and he goes and gets himself the championship. But obviously the big question and the big topic is, okay, Joey Logano, he's a 3-time champion. Everybody's talking about the playoff system. Does he deserve it? Does he not? He's played the system. You look at above here on the graphic, 2018, 2022, and 2024. He comes out there all 3 years. Those are playoff systems. We've changed it a little bit here and there, obviously, but it's for the most part, it's been the same, right? It's 3 races each round. We have had knockouts. We've had championship 4 since 2014, and Joey Logano has come out and he's been the guy that has seemed to master that system. And every year where you go back to 2018 where we had what we called it the big 3: Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Mark Truex Jr. They all make the Final Four. Who wins the title that year? Joey Logano. You go to 2022 where I think they had a solid year, but maybe people didn't put them as the championship favorite. But it was such an unpredictable year, right? First year, the next gen car, everybody's learning. So he goes in there and he wins that championship. And then we get to 2024 where he has, not an abysmal season, but not the season that they would have wanted or expected as far as the regular season goes, to get that win at Nashville. And he's able to basically qualify himself into the playoffs with that win automatically, goes out, wins the first race of the playoffs at Atlanta, comes out and wins Las Vegas. He got into the round of 8 because of a penalty by Hendrick Motorsports. He was going to be eliminated, but then gets put in. So it's like this playoff journey here for Joey Logano, this championship journey, is one of the most incredible you will ever follow. And yes, it's based and planted by the format that we have. So will there be changes this offseason? That's been the question a lot of people are asking now. I certainly do believe there will be discussions. Do I think there will be changes? Not sure. But do I think there will be discussions of some sort to what they can do to alter the playoffs? Because Steve O'Donnell came out and said, we're not getting rid of the playoffs. And, you can take that how you will. But when he say he's not, we're not going away with the playoffs, he also is talking about format, the playoffs in general. So the format can be changed. They left that open, but calling it the playoffs or the chase, there will always be something like that. So Joey Logano, 3-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. We move over to the truck series, which was one of the one of the many cool stories of the weekend. But Ty Majeski comes out here and he dominates the race at Phoenix. I mean, nobody got by him. He just dominates. He wins that race for Thorsport. Thorsport gets themselves another championship after Ben Rhodes had won it last year, and now they've won 3 out of the last 4 championships in the truck series. So big shout out to Ty Majeski and that organization, and obviously Justin Allgaier doing what he did, coming out there and just, I mean, an absolutely miraculous effort there for Justin Allgaier to go and win himself the title. That for sure is something worth noting. So shout out Justin Allgaier, Ty Majeski, Joey Logano, all the champions. But let's get into some news. It's the off season. And let's start talking about some things that are going on in the NASCAR world. Obviously, a few days ago, it comes out Riley Herbst is going to 2311 Racing. He's going to drive the number 35 Toyota in 2025, backed by Monster Energy. That makes 3 Monster Energy Toyotas that are going to be in the Cup Series field next year. So might be a little confusing for spotters, but we got Tyler Reddick, obviously, in that 45 as of now. And then we got Ty Gibbs in that 54, Riley Herbst in that number 35. So there's a lot of shuffling going on at Toyota. We have Chris Gabehart, who is moving to a bigger role at Joe Gibbs Racing. That sends Chris Gale to be Denny Hamlin's crew chief. We don't know who Ty Gibbs' crew chief is going to be yet, but a little shakeup on the boxes there. Now Chris Gabehart gets a little promotion in essence over there at Joe Gibbs Racing. Now we don't know what's going on with 2311 Racing. Obviously, we know they're in the midst of a lawsuit. Everything going on there. They're trying to figure that out. As of now, as we currently stand, they would be running 3 unchartered race cars next year, which certainly is a challenge, right? But doesn't require them to show up to the Clash, doesn't require them to show up to the All-Star race, so they can cut costs in essence, but it is certainly very, very much more expensive to run as an unchartered organization of the NASCAR Cup Series. And obviously, as most people know, not a guaranteed spot into the races, where I feel like next year we will see a solid amount of races with 40 plus cars in it. Obviously, we know the Daytona 500 will as well. So kind of along those same lines, you have Martin Truex Jr., who came out and said, hey, I plan to race in the Daytona 500. He said a few months back that it would be with 2311 Racing. That is not the case anymore. And you're going to have to kind of connect the dots here and blame the lawsuit for that, blame all this legal stuff for that, that Martin Truex Jr. won't be running for 2311 because they probably don't know how many cars they're going to be able to run next year. And we're going to find out, obviously, once we get to February and once we get to the nitty gritty down in January. But Truex obviously trying to see what he can do. He says that he does have a ride set up. He said Joe Gibbs Racing is setting it up for him. Do we know if it's directly through Joe Gibbs Racing or if it's with another team? We don't know. But we will see. Somebody asked, does Sam Hunt have TRD support? Yes, technically, yes. We don't know exactly what their what they will look like next year. It's not the strongest equipment, but they do have some Toyota backing with that organization. We'll see what they look like next year. But, that'll kind of relay us over here. Let's look at the free agents for next year. Free agents in NASCAR. Obviously, you have 25-year-old Zane Smith, who is one of probably the top free agent, in my opinion. Now, you can differ between, okay, do you want Zane Smith or do you want Chandler Smith? I think both are incredible options. But Zane, he's been in the Cup Series car now for a year and a half. He goes out there, obviously Truck Series champion. Never really did anything crazy in the Xfinity Series because he went from trucks to Cup. But I think Zane, being a guy that in the second half of the year really came into his own. You got to think he finished second in Nashville, right behind Joey Logano, the race that got Joey Logano into the playoffs guaranteed. But that's nothing to take away from Chandler Smith. Still an incredible driver, 22 years old, still very young with lots of experience. I mean, he's got years in the Truck Series, years in the Xfinity Series now with different manufacturers as well. He's running with Chevy. He's running with Toyota. He went back to Toyota this year, almost was able to compete for a championship at Phoenix. So I think he is someone that certainly, we hope, finds a home because he is well deserving of that. 72-year-old Norm Benning, of course, free agent every year. We'll see if anybody picks your boy up. Anyways, moving to, 29-year-old Myatt Snyder, technically on the free agent list. Been there for the last few years. He hasn't really run any full-time schedules. I know he's open to it. Every driver is open to going out there and running for a championship, but it takes money, it takes funding, it takes financials, and it takes a lot of pens to paper to put things together. Corey LaJoie, 33 years old. He is obviously looking for somewhere ideally in the Cup Series. I still thought that he should have probably just taken an Xfinity ride, a Truck Series ride. but he's obviously still looking in the Cup Series. We'll see what happens with the Rick Ware Racing ride. We know one of those charters is going to be leased to RFK Racing. Do they run a second unchartered car here and there? I would say so, but who's going to get that full-time ride? Is it going to be Cody Ware or is it going to be Corey LaJoy? That's kind of the conversation right now, kind of the toss-up. Anthony Alfredo, 25 years old. He is a free agent, not returning to our motorsports next year in that number 5 car. But that will be taken over by Chris Wright. He will be in that 5 car. And Anthony Alfredo likely probably going to stay in the Xfinity Series next year, from what I'm told. Nothing is extremely totally finalized yet, I believe, to the last of my belief, but we will see what happens with him. And then Kaz Gralla possibly move to the Truck Series next year. He's 25 years old, still young, and able to make some things happen. He's bounced around a lot in his career, but hopefully may be able to find a full-time home next year after getting a lot of some decent runs this year in the Cup Series for Rick Ware Racing. Great exposure for him. And then Ryan Truex on here as well, 32 years old. We know that he has come out for Joe Goose Racing the last few years, won a few races, ran a few races, won a few races this year, getting 3 checkered flags. For him to go, or 2 checkered flags, for him to go out there and do that, really impressive on Ryan Truex's part. So hopefully, we all are hoping, especially with the retirement of MTJ, we can keep a Truex in NASCAR in the full-time ranks. We'll see what happens with that. But those are kind of, we have a lot of other free agents. I see CJ McLaughlin in our in the IG part of our live. I would assume CJ is technically a free agent. We'll see what CJ does next year. Hopefully, we see him at February at Daytona. But let's go to some of the moves. Some of the guys that used to be free agents that are no longer free agents. A guy that was on that list a few weeks ago. Speaking of the Truck Series, we go Daniel Hemrick. He moves back down to the Truck Series, and a number that is familiar with him. Shades of BKR when he was coming up the ranks. But he joins an organization that is one of the best. This truck was driven by Christian Eckes, competing for a title with Corey Heim. And Ty Majeski, who was the eventual champion. But Daniel Hemrick, he will be down in the Truck Series. See, somebody asked about Corey Heim. Yeah, doing another year in trucks. That is also news that came out in the last few weeks. Corey Heim staying in the Truck Series. It's going to be his 3rd year in the Truck Series. A lot of people are wondering, okay, why not Xfinity Series? Why not even Cup Series? And I think a lot of his money, a lot of his is financial. But I would assume this will be Heim's last, 3rd and last year in the Truck Series, and he will move up from there. And hopefully he will want to end this year on a championship. CJ McLaughlin says, working on his plans, working on it. Awesome, CJ. Hope to see you next year in February. That would be awesome. And if this show keeps going over the offseason, we'll definitely get you on here maybe after you announce something. But Daniel Hemrick in the Truck Series, joining MHR for next year. I think this is a huge opportunity for him to go out and prove himself. A lot of people tab this as a ride for somebody experienced to go get. People wanted Corey LaJoy to take this ride, but it ends up being Daniel Hemrick, who is the former Cup Series driver, to jump back to the Truck Series. And who knows? He's staying with Chevy. He's always been a Chevy guy, besides when he was with Joe Gibbs Racing and won that championship. But I'm excited for Hemrick to see what he can do next year. He had some decent runs, and it's really hard to evaluate those guys in colleague racing. Just because we know their equipment isn't at the top of their game right now. And it was hard to evaluate them, guys like Hemrick going out there, guys like when Ty Dillon goes out there, when SVG's driving out there in those cars. We know Allmendinger is able to go out there and usually get some decent runs in that equipment. But Hemrick will be in the top Truck Series equipment next year, and I think it's going to be fun to see what he does with it. Some other Truck Series news coming out this morning, actually, a few hours ago. Tony Breidinger is going to be in the Truck Series next year, full-time, driving for Tricon Garage. He takes over the number 5, which previously was Dean Thompson. So you look at a team that now has Tony Breidinger driving full-time in the 5. We know Corey Heim is going to be back in the 11, like we just said. Tanner Gray is returning in the 15 as well. We'll see who takes that 17 truck, if anybody. But Tricon shaping up to kind of keep everybody together here. We know Tony's run a few truck starts and done pretty well. So really excited for Tony. She'll be on this show at some point this offseason, so that'll be a lot of fun. But really happy for her and that whole organization to get something done here. So Tony will be in the Truck Series next year. That'll be a lot of fun to watch. One of the other Cup Series storylines, FedEx leaving Denny Hamlin. This kind of goes in line with all the Toyota things that we were talking about. FedEx no longer being with Denny Hamlin. I think that is something that is certainly going to be monitored because, their presence had dissipated with Joe Gibbs Racing over the offseason just a little bit. We've seen Mavis on the car a lot more, sports clips. So I think they will be okay for sure. But certainly a big blow for a partnership that has been going on for decades. Began in 2005 all the way until 2024 at Phoenix. FedEx was riding with Denny Hamlin, so it's going to be definitely a sight to not see the FedEx 11 out there, because I think that goes hand in hand with the Lowe's 48 and the M&M's 18. Those are just cars that you remember, sponsorship and driving pairings that you remember. So that's going to be sad to miss. And another thing that is sad, Stewart Haas Racing, saying goodbye to SHR. Obviously, we're still, we're already 2-3 weeks out from Phoenix, but still sad to think about Stewart Haas Racing, a team that, still was one of, compared to all the big 4-car powerhouse teams, right? It's one of the newer teams, that came along. Tony Stewart goes out there, wins a championship, 2011. Harvick wins one in 14, and a team that just never was the same ever since 2021, really. A team that never really had all 4 cars at strength. You can say that the 41 has never been what anybody wanted it to be, even when they had Kurt Busch in that car, and then having Daniel Suarez and then Cole Custer. It just never was really what they wanted it to be. It was really only that 4 flagship car for Kevin Harvick, and he goes away, and what happens? Unfortunately, the team crumbles. So very happy, though, that all 4 drivers have landed on their feet. We know Josh Berry going to Wood Brothers. That's going to be a great opportunity for him. We know Noah Gregson's going to Front Row Motorsports. That'll be a great opportunity for him. We'll see what that looks like logistically with the lawsuit. We know Chase Briscoe is going to Joe Gibbs Racing, probably the best landing spot for him there. I think he's going to do tremendous in that role. And then Ryan Preece just recently announced a few weeks ago that officially he will be going to RFK Racing in the 60 car. I think that is a great opportunity for him, and kind of what feels like a last chance opportunity. Ryan Preece, a guy that has come and run for those B-plus teams, right, all of his career. You want to see him, decently in the 37. Obviously, that ride doesn't work out. Now he goes to SHR. They don't have the success that they wanted. He's had some decent runs, but it's going to be interesting to see what they can do next year in that 60 car for RFK, a team that has continually proved that they have been getting better, right? With Brad Keselowski having good runs, with Chris Buescher winning races, and Ryan Preece hopefully having that breakout year next year, I think is obviously what he wants. But we'll see. What is 2025 looking for Eric Almirola? Not currently sure at the moment. Now, I know there is still obviously races at Joe Gibbs Racing for him to attain. Does he want to come back and run that part-time schedule that he ran last year? Honestly, I could see it. I feel like that was something that, right, he came out and said, you don't lose the love for racing, but you do want to spend time with your family, spend time with your kids. And I think Eric Almirola was a guy that wanted to take that step back. Obviously, he retired, years ago, and then announced he was coming back for a full season with, SHR, then announced he's retiring again. But comes back part-time with Joe Gibbs Racing. So I certainly think with the success that they had this year, I mean, he was incredible in that 20 car, contending for wins. I mean, almost every race that they competed in, he was up there contending for wins. And you see people come in those cars and maybe run 10th, maybe they run 7th. But Eric Almirola, every race, he was a competitor. He was a guy that even in races where you didn't expect him to be that top guy, he came up there and he proved why he is a great race car driver. So definitely big shout out to Eric Almirola, Tampa native, by the way, Tampa native down here in Tampa, Florida. But big shout out for Eric Almirola to be able to make that happen. So that was very cool. So we'll see what he does next year. Not totally, confident what they will do. Let's see. Why doesn't 2311 start an Xfinity team? Well, they got a lot of stuff going on right now. Now, I would love to see that. Obviously, another Toyota-backed, TRD-backed Xfinity Series team. Maybe they take the assets of Sam Hunt Racing one day and kind of collaborate on something. But yeah, they got a lot of stuff going on right now. So 2311 is probably going to not be in that conversation for as far as getting an Xfinity Series team soon. Does Satori HRE of Toyota support? Technically, not really anymore, because they're not really a team anymore. I mean, they are a team. They run a few races per year. But, I mean, back when they were running full-time, yes. They were a TRD organization, but now it's kind of just like up in the air. They show up when they want. They got old trucks. Obviously Johnny Sauter was racing for them. We saw Eric Almirola run for them in North Wilkesboro earlier in the year. So not completely. Let's go to Phoenix here real quick. We'll have David Hayes joining us in just a little bit. He's experiencing some delays, but let's go to Phoenix and watch this video here real quick, because I think it's hilarious. The pace car is coming off the racetrack here and spins itself. Obviously, everybody has seen this, but we can't see it enough times. of what happened in Phoenix. And in my opinion, I look at this and I think of like, okay, if you were to put the year 2024 in a nutshell for NASCAR, I feel like this is the video that you would show somebody. I mean, what an incredible year. Lots of highs, some lows, some craziness, some that you can't even consider highs or lows. It was just a bunch of craziness and drama. I mean, we saw photo finishes, we saw, I mean, rule changes all year long, penalties, we saw fights, we saw, I mean, all the above, everything that you can think of. You could probably go into Phoenix and say, well, we haven't seen the pace car crash yet. And then there it goes. So the pace car spins out, hits the barrels. I thought that was hilarious. But certainly a representation of what this year has been. Something else I also want to talk about, switching gears to some late model racing. How about this? The Budweiser number 8 car. It's back. Dale Earnhardt Jr. returned in that late model with the Bass Pro Shops on the side, but Budweiser all over the car, the scheme that we watched growing up, you know, when Dale Jr. was running that 8 car for DEI, able to bring the number back, bring Budweiser back, and go out there at Florence, start like 40 something, makes his way all the way up through the field, gets to second, and then the car is mechanical failure. And so it's like shades of Bristol when he was running there a year and a half ago, where he ran that 88 car all the way up to the front, and then all of a sudden something expires. Same thing happened on their car. I believe it was a fuel pump issue, but I know that they sold out Florence. I'm pretty sure. I had some people I know that went, and obviously seeing the buzz and everything. I know the broadcast wasn't great. I know there were a lot of other things that didn't go super well. But I think to be able to sell out a short track racing, getting the stars to the racetrack, like we know some races like the Snowball Derby will sell out, and be a hot commodity. But I think somewhere like Florence, to get a race like that, as much buzz as it did for Dale being there, I think that is awesome for him, for the short track scene. And yeah, so we will have David Hayes join us in a little bit. Let's talk more about the playoffs, because I know that's something that a lot of people, like I said before, a lot of people have been asking about the playoffs, the playoff system, what's going to happen. Well, Joey Logano came out and he put out this little quote tweet here and said, "I've got a pretty sweet trophy right now. I'll be laughing it all the way to the bank." And that is Joey Logano in response to fans saying he does not deserve the championship. And so I think that is certainly, you can't totally argue with it, in my opinion. You have Joey Logano, who is a guy that, he comes out and does everything that he needs to do in the format. Now I've come out a few times and said what I think my format should be. Quick and simple. I think we should go back to 10 race chase. I think to meet in the middle, I still do the idea of the final 4 race championship race is fun. I don't think they're ever going to go away from that. So I think if we have a 10 race chase, right, 9 races that straight up on points lead up to a final 4 at not Phoenix, but hopefully Homestead in 2026. I think that's the ideal format, in my opinion. Does Austin Hill have a pathway to Cup? Yes. So, I mean, he's got probably one of the most guaranteed pathways, I would say, because he's got experience, he's got money behind him, and he's got an organization that I know is going to continue to ride behind him. Next year, it is believed Austin Hill, he will, again, make some Xfinity Series starts. He will also be joined by Jesse Love, who is expected to make some Xfinity Series starts, or Cup Series starts as well. I believe the last thing I heard for Jesse Love was hopefully 5 races for him in that 33 car. So we'll see Jesse Love make his Cup Series debut at some point next year. I know that is the goal for the team. And then Austin Hill will be back, I'm sure, for a handful of races. We'll see if he comes back. I'm sure the Daytona 500 they will enter, as well as some other races throughout the schedule, like some of those road course races and things like that. But I think Austin Hill certainly, RCR was a team that was exploring possibly a 3rd charter, but I do believe if they get one, and whatever happens with Kyle Busch, if he does leave, right, Austin Dillon, what happens with his ride, and this is talking about 2026, because we know Austin Hill's going back to the Xfinity Series next year. I think that certainly leaves a spot open for him. I think Austin Hill is an RCR guy. He's a Chevy guy, but I think he's an RCR guy for the rest of his career, and I think that's somebody that they don't want to give up on. And I think they also got a great talent in Jesse Love, and so they're going to be, watching Jesse Love, seeing how he does, and kind of evaluating him, and how quick do they want to move Jesse Love up. So that's also going to be a decision that, they are going to have to make when the time comes. So yeah, you look at this, this crop of Xfinity Series guys. We can put the free agents back on here as well. But you look at the crop of guys that, we look at Xfinity Series guys that are probably next to go up to the Cup Series, but we look at guys that are free agents right now. Who do you pick out of these 8 drivers? Norm Benning was just a joke. But, well, if you want to pick him, go for it. But, you look at, these 7 guys up here. You got Zane Smith, Chandler Smith, Myatt Snyder, Corey LaJoie, Anthony Alfredo, Kaz Grala, Ryan Truex. Now, there are rumors for where some of these guys will go, but most of them, they don't have anything finalized right now. And so you look at your organization, say you got, while looking at this, we got to look at what rides are open next year. I think that's the big conversation here that we have to talk about. What is still open? So technically, there is a Front Row Motorsports ride that is still open. Technically, not technically, there is the Rick Ware Racing chartered entry. That is still open. Do they run a second car, unchartered full time? I don't think so. I don't see that happening. But you never know. I would see it just being part time. But you got as far as the Cup Series, you got the Front Row Motorsports ride that is still open. You got the Rick Ware Racing car that is still open. You go over to the Xfinity Series. Most top rides, pretty much all of them are taken. Colleague Racing is full. We got Christian Eckes, Josh Williams, Daniel Dye, all there in the Xfinity Series for that team. Then you go over to Joe Gibbs Racing. That team is pretty much filled up as well. You got your drivers. You got, Taylor Gray, William Sawalich, Brandon Jones is back with the organization. That fourth, part-time driver swap ride over there. You look at a team like Haas Factory team. Sheldon Creed is there. We have Sam Mayer, who is also there as well. You go over to Junior Motorsports. You're filled up there. So there are not many rides in the Xfinity Series or the Cup Series that are available for the taking. Now, if I look at this list and kind of predict where everybody could go, okay, Zane Smith has been linked to Front Row Motorsports. I would assume that is still his destination, but we will see what happens. This lawsuit has screwed a bunch of things up. Both of the Smiths were in conversations to possibly be a Front Row Motorsports driver next year. Chandler Smith. If Zane Smith goes to FRM, where do I see Chandler Smith going? I truly don't know, because you look at the rides open. Now, Rick Ware Racing seems to be set on their LaJoie or Ware decision. Front Row Motorsports seems to be set on Zane Smith, I would assume. So you go down to the Xfinity Series. Okay, what's open in the Xfinity Series? Not much at all. You go to the Truck Series. Are there any championship rides open? Technically, yes. A lot of the Truck Series rides are not finalized until next year. Could Chandler Smith go down to Xfinity, or could he go down to the Truck Series and compete for a championship, maybe in a Thor Sport ride that becomes open? Could he go in a second Front Row Motorsports truck? Could he be in a Tricon truck, with Toyota? Anything's possible, but is it realistic? Is that something that he wants to do? And how much money does he have? Things still take money, even in the Truck Series. So I think, that is certainly, I think the biggest domino is, where does Chandler Smith fall? Now, personally, do I think it's fun to see somebody go to the Xfinity Series and maybe run for like a B organization, right? If there is nothing in the world, would you love to see Chandler Smith, instead of nothing, run for RSS, in the 29 car? Would you love to see him run for Jordan Anderson Racing? I mean, it's not ideal for him, but people already know what he is capable of. And yes, this year has been, ran out of time to get a ride, but you know what? There's going to be more rides that open 2026. If you can go somewhere and impress, I think he is someone that is certainly worthy of watching. I would love to see him in like a B+ organization in the Xfinity Series, because I don't think it's going to ruin his career. People already know what he's capable of. I think that'll just kind of set him up for hopefully a bigger ride next year, but it sucks that there's not much options going on. Corey LaJoie, that is also an interesting, development here. If Rick Ware Racing decides to go with Cody Ware full-time in that 51 car, Corey LaJoie is out of a ride. And Corey LaJoie is somebody, though, I look at here where, yes, even in the Cup Series, he hasn't driven for top organizations, but you do look at Spire Motorsports and how great they are becoming. I think they're going to be a tremendous organization next year and a tremendous organization for the future. So I look at Corey LaJoie and I'm like, okay, where could I see Corey LaJoie fitting in? I certainly think Corey LaJoie is somebody that could benefit going to get checkered flags in the Truck Series with Daniel Hemrick. Him Daniel Hemrick and Harrison Burton. I do like Harrison Burton's ride for next year, being in the 15 for AM Racing, but those are guys that it's not working out in the Cup Series, okay? But you believe that you can go get checkered flags, go get them somewhere else. So I would love to see Corey LaJoie in a top truck ride, but I would also, he's one of those guys I would love to see in like a B Xfinity ride. Um, so we'll see where he could place himself. I know there's still some Chevy teams open. I know Alpha Prime Racing kind of has their drivers set for next year, with the driver to be announced pretty soon in their second car. That just was recently a free agent from another Xfinity team, not Anthony Alfredo, but that's kind of all set up. So I don't know, it's so unpredictable where these guys are going to land. Anthony Alfredo, I kind of do know where he's going to land. As long as all that gets finalized and set up, he'll be in the Xfinity Series for a Chevrolet team. Kaz Grala, the belief is that he's going to Spire Motorsports. That's what I've heard in the Truck Series. I would assume Kaz Grala will be in Spire Motorsports for the Truck Series. And then Ryan Truex is just kind of that domino where you don't really know. It all depends on money. You would love to see Ryan Truex full-time. If Sam Hunt Racing were to ever go with the full-time driver again, I would love for that to be Ryan Truex. But we'll see. So we'll see what happens. Now, there are other free agents, right, that other than these drivers that are technically do not have things set up for next year. Dean Thompson just announced today officially, with Tony Breidinger taking over that 5 truck, that Dean Thompson is going to be without a ride next year. So where does he land? You scroll down the list here. Jeb Burton, nothing official announced for him being back at Jordan Anderson, but I would assume he would be back there. Parker Retzloff, kind of keying in with the thing I just said a few minutes ago. His plan should be announced in a few weeks here. Leland Honeyman, where does he land? Solid young driver. I don't think he's going to be back at Young's, at least that Xfinity car next year. But where does he land? Honestly, an impressive year for him, to be honest. Shout out Leland Honeyman. We'll get him on this show some point in this offseason, maybe when he has some things to announce as well. But tremendous year for him. Kyle Weatherman. Kyle Weatherman will be joining us next week on the show. So we'll kind of get some more insight into what he will possibly be doing next year. So that will be also fun to follow, because I think Weatherman is an incredible driver, incredible human being as well. He's been fun to watch. Blaine Perkins looks like he's all set to possibly go to Jordan Anderson Racing next year in that 31 car. Matt DiBenedetto should be sticking with Viking Motorsports. They're going to look a little bit different next year, though. Josh Bilicki, where does he land? He's always been that kind of part-time guy the last 3-4 years. Where does he land? And then you kind of scored on the list here in the Truck Series, guys that, you kind of look at, okay, these guys going to stay in the Truck Series. They're going to go up. Grant Enfinger, we know he'll be back next year. Nick Sanchez, we know he's going to the Xfinity Series next year for Big Machine. So that'll be fun to watch. Rajah Caruth, I would expect to be back in the Truck Series next year. We know Ben Rhodes is probably going to be back. Ty Majeski, I would assume, is going to be back. Stuart Friesen, Matt Crafton. Chase Purdy, without a ride. He is also one of those free agents. Not on this list. He's still young, but he's very experienced. I think he had a better year than maybe some people expected, but still not great. I think they started off hot and kind of faded as the year went on. Bailey Curry, a guy like that, where does he end up? Gritty driver. Hopefully see him land on his feet. Connor Mosack, the last name I'll kind of name there, going on my spiel. He is somebody that I want to see where is Connor Mosack can end up next year, because I think he has improved himself tremendously as a race car driver. And I am very intrigued to see where Connor Mosack ends up next year. We know he was doing some races for Toyota this year. He comes out, does some junior motorsports races in the 88, runs for Spire in the 7 truck, and is able to have kind of a very solid year for him in that organization. So let's talk about one more thing here before we head to a little short break. Kyle Busch, the winning streak is over. 19 straight seasons. The winning streak of 19 straight seasons came to an end this year in 2024. This is meant to be something that, we didn't think was going to happen. We thought Kyle Busch was going to come out and get a win this year. And you know what? I expected that to certainly, be the case. There's Tony Breidinger. Shout outs to Tony Breidinger. We talked about it earlier in the show, Tony, but congratulations on your ride in the number 5 in the Truck Series for Tricon. Going to do amazing things. You guys got a tremendous organization over there, especially lined up for next year. Good thing that guy Corey Heim is sticking around, as well as Tanner Gray. You got all the experience in the world over there, so that'll be a lot of fun. To see what you guys can do in the Truck Series next year. Going to be a lot of fun, and can't wait to see it. So we'll see what happens there. But back to, Kyle Busch and not winning. We thought he was going to win, a former Toyota driver. We thought he was going to win so many times this year. It was like sitting on the edge of our seat. Darlington was probably most notably like I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to happen? And then it doesn't happen. Finishing just right behind Chase Briscoe. Daytona, losing it on the final lap to Harrison Burton. You got all these other tracks where they were just running up front. It's not even like even just some of the races where he wasn't going to win. I mean, you think back to the Brickyard 400 where he was getting a top 5, spins out. So, that is something that I certainly, think was certainly a fun. We talk about on the radio all the time, that storyline between Kyle Busch and is he going to get a win this season? They ask me all the time, is he going to get that win? And I was like, I just don't know. I just don't know. And I didn't see it happening. And it didn't happen. You felt like it was going to happen. But you know what? Give this guy some stuff to fight for. Give this guy some momentum next year. And I think Kyle Busch in that 8 team will most certainly be back 100%. So we're going to take a small break here. We got some guests coming on the other side of the break, and then we'll wrap up around 2:00, talk about the rest of the season. We got some announcements to make at the end of this show regarding some events coming up in the winter. Going to be a lot of fun, and we'll hit our first break here if I figure it out. We'll see you guys. Welcome back, everybody. After that mini break, the goal is in the future to have commercials in that spot, but we don't have companies sponsoring us or commercials yet, since this is the first episode, and I'm still figuring stuff out. So, in the future, we'll have some ads on there, some cool stuff. You'll hear for some cool brands, maybe Caesar Baccarella's Alpha Prime. But nonetheless, we're going to wrap up here the last 40 minutes scheduled of this show. We still got 2 guests to come on. I said David Hayes was coming on around 1:00, but that was pushed back just a little bit. So he'll be joining us later, my host on ESPN Northwest Florida. So right now, I'm going to bring in my good buddy Chris Gollin from the Daytona area. Welcome to the show, my friend. We were going to have you join around 1:30, but we're going to move that up a little bit and have some fun here. So first of all, how you doing?
Great. I'm happy to be here in the old Motor Stardom studio, if you want to call it that. And just like say, nice, beautiful day out here around Daytona Beach, and a lot of stuff going on in the racing world.
Oh yeah, a lot of stuff going on. I've just been yapping here basically for the last 40 minutes. No specific format today, just kind of trying to figure out how all this this design and this studio and everything is working. So that's what I've been figuring out. But some people have been watching and chiming in, so that's been a lot of fun. The comment section's been kicking. We've been answering some questions on all three of our platforms that we're streaming on. So yeah, for those of you watching, I know most of you are going to be on Instagram, but we'll also be having this show weekly on YouTube and Twitch at the same time. So there's options for everybody wherever your primary source of watching content and stuff is. You can watch it anywhere you like. So it took me a little bit to get this Instagram set up, but we got it set up and it seems to be technically running decent. So next week is going to be a lot of fun, Chris. We're going to have some guests on there. I think we're looking at having Kyle Weatherman on the show. I think we're going to have Chris Wright on the show as well, who recently just announced his ride, Alpha Prime Racing. I was talking to Caesar Baccarella yesterday. They're going to be making an announcement soon. We'll be having Caesar on the show. And then Tony Breidinger as well. I know I was talking to her and their team. We're going to get her on the show hopefully in a few weeks, and it makes sense with their announcement. So maybe next week or the week after or something. She's got a busy schedule, so we'll figure it out. But nonetheless, I've just been talking about everything going on this season. I was looking at. I want to get your opinion here. I'll bring in the free agent board here of what I believe are the top 8 or at least 7 free agents in the sport right now. So, Chris, I'll ask you the question, my friend. If you had a team right now, say you are, should we do Xfinity Series? Like, okay, just hypothetically, you're a top Cup Series team right now. You got 2 open spots. You look at this list right here. You look at experience, look at age. Which 2 drivers are you going with?
Well, the easy pick is Zane Smith. I mean,
Very simple.
Out of everyone in that group, Zane has probably the highest ceiling out of any of these guys in talent. I mean, I'm a big believer in him, and his first year in Cup this year, it probably wasn't what a lot of people hoped. Probably wasn't what Zane hoped. But then you got to remember that this was the 3rd car on a team that has never had 2 competitive cars.
Yeah.
So a little slack is in order for Zane. I still am a big believer in him and his talent. Yeah. After that, it's really close between a few, assuming I'm bringing them to Cup. I'm pretty high on Chandler Smith. I think he's got a lot of ability. Corey LaJoie, I think, has shown at the right type of track he can run up near the front. I don't know if he's going to be a playoff contender, even if you have a top Cup equipment. I'm not totally sold on that. Yeah. Anthony Alfredo, I think, might be a nice safe pick there. We saw in Good Rides and Xfinity, he was consistent across the board and also very competitive at the plate tracks as well. So I probably would go either Corey or Anthony for that 2nd spot. Maybe Corey as like what would you say, like a bridge driver? Yeah. Maybe if I have Chandler in my pipeline, I don't know if I'm doing this format quite right. If I have Chandler in the pipeline, I may have Corey LaJoie in the car for a year or 2 while giving Chandler the full time he needs to develop, and then maybe move him up as the 2nd guy. But that's how I would tackle that.
Yeah, for sure. I think you still have like so many great drivers here with great potential. I mean, I was running down the list here on the show. You got Corey LaJoie, which I think is a good bridge driver. I think he's a guy where it's like he needs to go somewhere and get checkered flags. Like he needs to go somewhere and be able to win races, whether that's in the Truck Series or even the Xfinity Series. But there's not too many top rides open in the Xfinity Series right now. Anthony Alfredo, I know, will be back in Xfinity next year. He's been that guy that's been able to get more than what he's driving. Our Motorsports, they had a great year this year. I think better than they could have expected. Now they'll have Chris Wright in that ride next year. We'll see how that goes. We'll see what equipment they're bringing back. We'll see what expectations they have. But I certainly think it's still like, this part of the year, we announcements. I feel like announcements are still being announced earlier than ever. Like we still get announcements, driver announcements, even for the Xfinity Series in October, earlier than maybe we did 5 years ago. But still, you still get to December here, coming up here in just a few days. And you're like, man, you're just waiting for a lot of these guys to get signed. You're waiting for these deals to announce. But, as a lot of people understand, it's not just a driver getting signed to a team and a team wanting a driver, right? There's so many things that go with it. Everything's money. It's financial. What money can these guys bring to the table? It doesn't matter how much better Zane Smith is than Blaine Perkins, right? If one of those drivers brings more money to the table, they're probably going to get that ride. So we'll see what happens. But I want to get your thoughts as well. I haven't talked about this yet totally on the show. What are your thoughts, my friend, on Team Penske dominance? We'll kind of just recap the Cup Series playoffs here, but we got 3 years where, we kind of did like a test show before we launched this officially, and I feel like we talked about on there the odd year Joey, or the even year Joey Logano, kind of laughing about it, and then it comes true. And so these guys finished 1-2 in the championship race, to where now in the next gen era, it's been all Team Penske, every single championship. And even this year, they go 1-2. Hendrick was literally a non-factor. William Byron was a non-factor in that race, somewhat, but Tyler Reddick was really a non-factor. And so these teams got destroyed by Penske, in my opinion. And it's like all year we were saying, it's going to be Hendrick versus Gibbs. We were probably sitting there in Daytona in February, and me and you were probably sitting in Daytona in August saying it's Hendrick and Gibbs. It's a Hendrick and Gibbs fight, right? Like, they're the best teams in the sport. And you're looking at two guys that just destroyed the field at Phoenix, and nobody probably picked them to be a champ. Maybe Ryan Blaney to repeat, but ain't nobody picked Joey Logano. What are your thoughts on that 22 car, a 3-time champion, Joey Logano?
Yeah, it's funny because it absolutely is Penske dominance if they're winning 3 titles in a row. But you look back on these 3 years and you don't really remember Penske dominating all that much. It's like the dominance that wasn't, the dynasty that wasn't, because their way of doing it is very, it's great timing every year. They're around through the regular season. They're finding a win or two. Certainly not out of the hunt, but you're not pegging them as championship favorites for the majority of the year, for the whole regular season. And then they just find what they need to find at the end of the year. That is how this Penske dynasty has been working. It's not like other dynasties in sports where, like the Yankees in the late 90s, early 2000s were just smoking everyone the whole year, or the Bulls, however you want to compare it. It's not like that. It's different. And the big reason for that is, of course, the format. And people are complaining. A lot of people are about the Logano Championship because, I forget where he would have fallen in like the old format Winston Cup points. But some people are a little complaining about that. And I certainly get it, because this format changes what the word champion means. Yes. People, I think, are still attached to it being the guy who was dominating the whole season, who was consistent the whole season. And that's simply not what it is in NASCAR. I certainly don't think the Penske guys deserve to be the ones getting the frustration. Like, don't take it out on Joey if that's how you feel. I get it, certainly. But these guys have the same format that everyone out there has had put in front of them. And the validity of the format is a whole another conversation separate from this. Yeah. But the important thing, I think, as far as Penske goes, is that they're on even ground with everyone. They're just the ones that are executing under this format. Everyone else has the chance to rise up the same exact way Penske does, and no one's doing it. They're getting all, like Hendrick is racking up a lot of regular season wins, and Gibbs racking up a lot of regular season wins, and they're not winning the championship. Yeah. So Penske is just the best at the format that was laid out in front of them. I think that's kind of all there is to it.
And that's the truth. They come out here and they do what they need to do. You can't hate on Team Penske, and you can't hate on Joey Logano. They took the format they're given and execute. Would they rather be better during the season? Sure, for sponsors, for money. Are they going to rather have more wins and better finishes? Of course. But you know what? They come out at the end of the year and they do what they need to do, and they win the championship, and that's undisputed at this point. They're 3 for 3 in the next gen era, and whatever changes happen to the format next year, I'm sure they're going to adapt. And you know what? They're going to be championship contenders come Phoenix again, and then hopefully in 2026 Homestead. I'm always going to throw that in. I keep talking about championship weekend 2025, for Phoenix, of course, but the next year we're pushing for Homestead Miami to come back as that championship race. So we'll see. One thing I want to note on, let's talk about the driver. I haven't talked about it yet. in his final race. We got the video of him getting the standing O in the media center here. You got shout out Chad Fincham there in the back. But Martin Truex Jr. running in his final full-time race. We know that he wants to come back next year and run some races. We know his goal is to run the Daytona 500, but that's not going to be with 2311 anymore. Kind of talked about that a little bit ago. But, what do you make of Martin Truex Jr.'s final year? He goes out there, he wins the pole. They don't have a great race at all. Obviously had a pretty tragic Martinsville. But he seems to be really happy being retired and not having to worry about media obligations this offseason, not having to worry about, this and that, and not have to worry about full-time racing. It seems like, come Watkins Glen, he was just ready to go. And I think he lived it out, his career as the best he could. He's a champion in the sport. He's a double-digit winner in the sport, and all props to him. But what do you make of Martin Truex Jr.'s full-time career, and how much do you think we'll really see him next year?
I think there's no way to know how much we're going to see him race next year until we figure out where he's going to drive for. That is, he had a sort of informal, maybe a handshake agreement, or maybe it was on paper with 2311, and that's clearly out the window. So it's going to depend on where he can get a seat. And until we know that, I think it's really hard to nail down how much we're going to see him next year. I think one thing a lot of people don't know about Martin, that I've heard a lot of people who have been close to him say, is that he races to race, and that's it. Yeah. He is not about the whole, the celebrity aspect of being a NASCAR driver. He is not about, the whole the stardom of it. Not to say he resents it or anything like that, but he's a guy, like, when he's not at the track, he might as well be off the grid. He is fishing. He is spending time with family. He is, he's very much the racing is what he enjoys. And I think over the last few years, maybe a little similar to the last few years of Jimmy Johnson's career, he was running close enough to the front where wins seemed like they should be happening, but they just weren't really executing. They weren't quite there. And how much of that is Martin? How much of it is the 19 team? Who's to say? We certainly know Martin's a future Hall of Famer. He's an extremely talented driver, but he's one, looking back on his career, it's a tale of two careers, sort of. You have the DEI days and the, which is Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. I know, being a non-NASCAR reporter, I forget DEI means something else nowadays. He was a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated driver, and then he was a Michael Waltrip Racing driver.
Yep.
And that was one career in which he looked like a guy who was going to get, it looked like he was going to retire with like 5 wins, maybe.
Yeah.
When it was all said and done. And then he got to Furniture Row after Regan Smith and Kurt Busch held down the 78, and it was like fringe competitive, not a world beater by any means. And something happened like 2014 or so, and it was a renaissance for him. So it's almost hard to remember sometimes that it's the same guy we saw in the 56 and the 1 all those years to start out, because in the second half of his career there, he really did go from, maybe a somewhat memorable driver to someone who we're going to see go in the Hall of Fame in the future. So, certainly, glad to see Martin got to really, really capitalize on what he loved to do for those years, which is just racing.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully in the end, we get to see him in Daytona. We get to ask him some questions again, because, we remember, if we can see it. It's a little blurry. I don't have the greatest camera, but we'll get the video out there sometime this off season during the show. I'll get the video on here so we can play it of good old Chris instigating the hell out of Martin Truex Jr. How old were you in that?
10.
10-year-old Chris instigating the hell out of Martin Truex Jr. in a not a presser, but where they were just, I guess, doing something where you guys got to ask the driver something before the race or before something.
Yep, at Fan Fest at Daytona.
Fan Fest
2009. Yeah, that's a heck of a clip. Once the followers kind of maybe know who I am a little bit more, they're gonna probably quite enjoy that one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that when you sent me over, I've never seen that. So that was hilarious because I'm watching it and, I thought you were just sending me some video and then I see them put your name on there. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was you. So
Yeah.
that was funny. That got a good laugh out of me. So, but like I said, I want to, we'll, get to some nitty gritty here real quick before we welcome in David Hayes if he ends up making it in. And for background, David Hayes is the guy that has hosted me on ESPN Radio Northwest Florida for the last 2 years. And so I was looking forward to today to, for our inaugural test show here to swap the roles. I bring him on and ask him the questions. You'll get to meet him as well. Before we get into that, we can talk about some motor stardom stuff. Obviously, you guys see here the branding here. I've done what I can to make this personal. We got some background, we got the logo right up there, stuff kicking and everything. So this, like I said, is my one of my been my biggest projects for the last years to have something like this, and we're just getting started. And like I said, next week we're gonna have a fun show, a lot of great guests on. But another goal as well, once I recover from my injury here, I'm like partially sitting. You can't see it, but for those who don't know, I've gotten a surgery in my tailbone area, and don't do it. It's not fun. And so this has been the first time I've been able to partially sit all week. But nonetheless, we're hoping to get a website going here during the off season in the next season. And with the website, you have writing, you have content, but we have writing and things like that. And I'd like to introduce everybody to the man who is going to be our lead writer for that website, and a man who has been crucial in helping out here and getting all this set up, the website and everything like that. It's coming soon. We're going to bring something really unique, really cool for you guys, something that you don't see every day and every week in the NASCAR world. But I'm happy to bring Chris along here. He's going to be our lead writer there on the website, and I think that's going to be really fun, really cool. He's from Daytona, as he's explained before. That's where we met over there in Daytona years ago. Obviously, we'll be back there in February because, of course, we will. But I think that's it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun off season to see what we can create, and the big goal is to hit 2025 running right off the gas. Not even for Daytona, but when we hit Bowman Gray over there earlier in February, it's going to be a lot of fun. So can't wait for it, my man, and happy to have you along here, and happy to have these logistics getting set up here, coming to fruition, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, it's super exciting. There's a lot of really great storytellers in the NASCAR world, and I've been following RJ's account since longer than I have known him by quite a bit, and I think we got a pretty good squad here, and I think we have something that we're really going to be able to add something, I think, to the environment of NASCAR media, and it's incredibly exciting to be able to be a part of it. So thank you for having me on board.
Yes, of course, and thank you very much for however it was that we met back in Daytona and began talking about stuff and everything like that, and introducing yourself and everything, because like my journey, and it's been a roller coaster for sure. But every year it's a new test and a new journey, new goals and everything like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we can create this year, past this year, and hopefully in the future. Motor Stardom is here, and we're gonna see where it goes. The black and gold, baby. Not just because I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I don't know if that's how it came along. Because I made these colors back in 2019 when I rebranded from Monster Cup News over to NASCAR Report. And I don't know. I guess the black and gold colors just stuck. It was something that I didn't see. You get a lot of red and you get a lot of blue. And so I went with the gold. I just like black and gold. That's why really I became a Saints fan. I enjoyed the hell out of watching Drew Brees, but I also love the black and gold. It's just a color scheme that sits nice with me. I enjoy wearing black and gold apparel at the racetrack. So that's been a lot of fun for me. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see where this goes. Somebody asked on Instagram, how safe is Alex Bowman's ride past 2025? And that is something that we could talk about real quick here. I mean, we don't know really. I mean, everything is such up in the air for that. There's been so many things going around about, okay, what deal does Justin Haley really have in place here, right? Does he really have a deal where it's okay if he performs, if he does A, B, and C, he gets a Hendrick Motorsports ride? or are they going to stick with Alex Bowman? In my opinion, I never really thought that Alex Bowman was going to be out of the 48 car. I think Ally as a sponsor loves him, and they are a crucial part of that 48 car. They are the 48 car. So, I think, they're a huge part of that team. I don't think they're going to get rid of Alex Bowman anytime soon, but you never know. We've seen crazier things in the sport. But what do you think? You think Alex Bowman's on a hot seat next year trying to fight for his ride, or do you think he can kind of just mellow out?
I think he's pretty safe. I think he's safer than people probably realize. Alex Bowman, I don't think necessarily gets enough credit sometimes. People have an idea like he is like the Ringo of Hendrick. And I was just able to pull up the stats here. In the 2024 regular season, among full-time drivers, Alex Bowman has the 8th best average finish in the Cup Series.
Yeah.
And given, is he 4th of 4 on Hendrick? Yeah, but someone has to be. And if your worst driver has the 8th best average finish in Cup in a quote-unquote down year for him, I think you're probably doing okay. You're probably doing pretty good. So now I'm very, very high on Justin Haley. I think he's really talented. He's one of my top drivers that's like not in top equipment, but who I see impressive things out of week in and week out. I'm a big Justin Haley fan. But I think the narrative people have spun that Bowman is like way underperforming, like comparing him to like a Casey Mears. No offense to Casey in like 07, 08 area.
Shout out Casey Mears.
Huh?
Shout out Casey Mears.
Yeah, shout out Casey Mears. Comparing it to that, I just don't think is at all fair to what they've been able to do with that 48 team in over the past few years. And he's Mr. Consistency. It might not be the most exciting thing in the world. Like he's not like Larson out there winning 6 races in a year. But he has won 4 races in a year. So he can put the car up at the front. He can run consistently. He can keep it clean. He can get good average finish, good points, good playoff peripherals. So while I can't roll anything out because I think the only way a different Hendrick driver would drop is if Kyle Larson decided to go run dirt. Other than that, it would be him. But I really don't think there's a pressing need to upgrade the 48 driver like I think some people feel there is. I think take a closer look at the stats, and I don't think it's really the story that people have it out that it is.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope that's something that we don't have to talk about a lot next year. And hopefully they can just come out, extend him. We don't have to talk about Alex Bowman's job security. We kind of just move on from that because I think he's a great driver. But, storylines certainly get things stirring. And that's something I talk about on the radio a lot. And with that, we're going to bridge to my good buddy here, David Hayes. We're going to bring him in. He is a man that we're kind of trading roles today. He always brings me on the radio show today. And today I'm going to bring him in here with a click of a button live from the studio, ESPN Northwest Florida. My good buddy David Hayes that I've known for the last 2 years that I've also met in Daytona as well. In addition to Chris, Chris over here is a Daytona guy. But David, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Hopefully I sound okay. I've got just Apple headphones on this afternoon.
And that's perfectly fine. Like I was explaining, this is this is going to be a show. We're just going to be having fun, talking NASCAR, laid back, but whatever equipment works, whatever can make it happen, we will make it happen.
I can pretend like I got the mic in front of me working.
Oh yeah, you do. Yeah, that's true. It's right there. So kind of, tell everybody, give us a background real quick. Obviously a lot of, people that follow the page and that are watching right now, have seen, content and stuff like that from ESPN Northwest Florida when I go on Mondays. But if you want to just give in detail kind of what is the schedule, what does the week look like for Mr. David Hayes? Obviously you do more than just the afternoon underdogs. There's a lot of shows that go on there, the inside drive and all that. You're a busy man, especially with high school football, kind of what's a week look like for you?
So week looks like Saturday and Sunday on a couch all day long watching football, and then on Monday get ready to go to work. I have a blessed schedule where I don't really start until about 10:30 or so. So and my boss is very lenient on the 10 or 10:30 as long as I'm there to get the show started at 11. So I have a 2-hour show from 11 to 1 in which I'm the producer slash board op for that show. It's the Inside Drive. That's Central Time. That would be 12 to 2 Eastern Time there. And then in between those hours, so in between 2 and 4, that's Central Time again, I am the programming director. So I do all of the live programming that we have. I build the clocks, and we've got a great teamwork system here where we have someone who basically makes all of our rejoiners and all of the sounds that you hear coming out of your speakers, and then the boss man takes care of the traffic. I just build the shells and pick out what live sports we're going to be airing throughout the week and throughout the weekend. And then from 4 to 6, 5 to 7 Eastern Time, I'm hosting the afternoon underdogs. And then on Fridays, which just ended last Friday, I am the play-by-play guy for the Mosley Dolphins.
Yeah, and that is a busy week, my friend. But I assume that you enjoy it and you love living it.
Love it, love it, man. It's a blessing.
We love sports, and especially for us, for me and Chris here, getting to cover racing. For me, especially getting to cover racing, just doing it kind of with my own brand and progressing this. It's an absolute dream to be able to. You never feel like you work if you're doing what you love,
right?
And so there's a lot of people that are, I try to keep myself as busy as I can doing stuff like this. And, whenever I can travel, it's amazing. But when you can do stuff like this, it's fun to do what you love. And so, David, I want to, kind of some people know your guy is Denny Hamlin.
Yeah.
Throughout the NASCAR
mainly because of number 11, but then as I've learned more about the sport of NASCAR, I grew up loving NASCAR, but kind of got away from it for a little bit, and then the more that I kind of have been learning about the sport and the new age that we're in of the sport from RJ, from yourself, and I like listening to his podcast, and I kind of like the way he speaks his mind, man. I think that's pretty awesome, and he seems like a stand-up dude who people don't like, and I admire that about Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, he certainly is, and he does speak his mind for sure. We talk about that a lot. He gives us a lot of things to talk about. He has NASCAR gives him a lot of things to talk about, and then what he says, it bounces back to us, the media, and then we're like, oh. Then he just came on his show and said this. Let's talk about it. And usually before we go on the air on Mondays, he drops his podcast like early. I mean, it's quick. I mean, they record either Sunday night or Monday morning or something like that. By the time we go on the air Monday, that's already dropped. So we already got some sound bites and everything like that. But do you have a favorite moment from, the season? I know we talk about a lot every week. Ooh. I know you don't get to watch every race. Obviously, you get to watch what you can, but you see the highlights. We've had a lot of big photo finishes. We've had controversial moments. We've had pace cars crashing. You ended up seeing that video, right? The pace car.
No, actually, I don't think that I saw the pace car crashing.
We're gonna watch it right now.
Here we go. This is what you're so great at.
Oh yeah. So this is the funnest part of the little studio here. We can play some videos. So as you can see, it was pulling off, but it didn't quite work out. It smashed into the.
He was trying to go Tokyo Drift into the pit.
It was. He pulled a little, and it just a little late call there. The little commitment cone violation, certainly on the pace car, but it was like of everything that we've seen this year. If you were to describe 2024 in a video, I mean, in the championship race, this red flagged the race. By the way, I don't know if we talked about that. The race was stopped for what, Chris? Like 20 minutes, maybe.
Something like that. Yeah, it was a pretty major disruption.
Yeah, a little bit. So that was certainly one of the funniest things that happened there on Sunday. But what would be your favorite moment from this season?
What was the race? Was it Atlanta where you had the 3 cars?
3 wide.
Was it Juan Pablo or no?
Suarez.
Suarez.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Suarez, Bush, and Blaney, right?
I think, yeah. That I think that would be the one, especially not going back through everything. If I'm trying to go through the entire catalog of every single Monday
Yeah.
when we talk and all of the highlights. I mean, NASCAR, when you think about all of the things that those teams have to do throughout the year and how long that season is and short the off season is, it's absolutely wild what those guys are able to pull off. And then they're also racing throughout the week and they're just nonstop living that life, which is it's really awesome, especially from someone who's not maybe I wouldn't call myself diehard, but more of the casual fan, but just really appreciate the sport. That would be my favorite. And then also anytime that we're getting these guys in boxing moments. So who was it? It wasn't Ryan Newman.
Ricky and Kyle.
Yes, that's exactly right. That one right there, that's got to be my favorite off the track, but still on the track moment of 2024. And like I've told RJ, I really do think that they should have boxing gloves ready to go. So if they've got an issue, they just need to let them go after it. Hey, just a 30-second round, get your swings in. We don't need any head injuries or anything like that. But come on now. These boys have put hands on each other prior to being NASCAR drivers. Put the boxing gloves on them and let them go after it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially that would be a way to levy these fines, because I think we've talked about it. I think the drivers should be able to go out there and express themselves if they're angry. Like what are all these highlight packages that we're watching every week, right? We're watching crashes and we're watching people fighting. Every week. That's what they put on these highlight videos. We're not going to have any more of that if we're dishing out $75,000 fine for throwing a punch, So I think that'd be a great meet in the middle type of situation there, Dave, as we get some gloves, so people can fight. We're not going to fine them because it's legal. We just let them have a nice little boxing match in the middle of the ring. Didn't they do that at Chris, you had to be there. It was Daytona like 3-4 years ago. They had was it a UFC, like a combat fighting ring in the middle of the fan zone at Daytona during one of the summer races. I was in the stands for this. So I think this was either like 19 or something like that, 20 or 2021, but it was during a rain delay and they were fighting they had like literally scheduled fights going on. They had like an octagon in the fan zone. And I thought that was hilarious. And people saw it because it was a rain delay and we're like, man, this is what we should do. Like we should have a ring set up, in the infield, and somebody's got some, displeasures and something a little bit crazier than the Chandler Smith Cole Custer punch. Cause you saw that, Dave, right?
That was like, all right, what are you trying to do here, buddy?
And he got fined for that too. I don't know if we talked about that. He caught a $10,000 fine for that slap.
We have people call it, and especially after your segment, I'm sure that once you get off of the line, you're you've got other things that you've got to do. But we have people call in after you get off the line, and they'll kind of go over, especially the diehard NASCAR fans of this area, and they'll kind of go over your points and what they liked about what you said. And one of the things that I'm starting to notice is the disconnect that NASCAR is starting to have with its diehard fans. And I think that this is one of those situations, right? Don't find these guys for letting their emotions show in such a sport that you're racing. I mean, you're racing for playoff spots. You're racing for money. You're racing for better equipment down the line. I mean, so many things are on the line. And when you're going to lose the personality of the drivers, which there's 36, 40, used to be 43, right? Didn't it used to be like the commonality was 43? I think now, what are you at? About 36, 38?
Yeah, about 38 every week.
And these guys have personalities, and I think that's one thing. Like you mentioned, when people are watching highlights, it's the crashes, it's the fights that they're showing, right? Well, that's very common or similar rather to baseball, where the only time that people are paying attention to baseball is if there's record-breaking things going on, playoffs are going on, or there's a scandal, and that's when it kind of starts getting into the news cycle. Well, basketball has done such a great job. The NBA has done such a great job at marketing its players. And I think baseball's starting to catch up to that. I think the NFL does a pretty good job at that, but the NFL is king. So they're like, whatever, we'll do whatever we want to do. I think NASCAR needs to let these guys be themselves. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the Denny Hamlin podcast and all of these drivers. Most of the popular ones have podcast, and so you can see their personality there, but don't let that stop when they're on the track. We want to see who these guys, some of these guys aren't fighters, some of them are lovers, if you will, but if they want to show their emotion after a 4-hour grueling race in the heat, let them guys do that. Don't find them. Maybe have a conversation with them. Maybe have a sit down and make that a podcast. This week's sit down provided by, Coors Light or whatever. We're drinking beer together and we talk about why we got upset at each other. And there's another element for, you don't even got to put hands on each other at that point. At that point, you can let the fans in on what it is, what happened in that situation for us to take it to that level.
Yeah, no, I agree. Chris, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one if you're NASCAR because certainly the fights, it is a lot of what people remember. It's what gets NASCAR in the news where it might not have otherwise been. I also feel like if there's nothing for, I don't have a proposal. I don't have a perfect solution. I feel like if there's nothing for a fight, one day I'm afraid you might get someone taken to the pavement and you might, God forbid, have things get a little much. Someone might get a little hurt. And NASCAR, unlike other sports, there's no grass. Well, typically they're not fighting on grass. I know the Custer and Nemechek one, that was kind of grass. Usually, no, it's on pavement. And I'm always a little afraid when you have these dog piles, someone's going to hit their head, God forbid. And if that happens and there's nothing in place, no fine or anything, then we're going to start wondering why there's not a fine. Because we're going to realize how dangerous this has been the whole time. Now, that being said, though, should there be a fine for Chandler Smith arguably hitting Cole Custer?
Very arguably.
I don't know about that. That was pretty mild. And I also don't want to get into the point where we're wanting drivers to keep their helmets on because everyone is not a good look. So yeah, like I say, I don't know where the balance is, but I foresee if we remove all fines, I foresee that might maybe being where that leads to, and I'm cautious about that. I'm worried about it. So I don't know. That's just something I think has to be part of the conversation. I think it's the aspect.
Yeah. No, I would certainly agree. I think that'd be cool. Like all fights that happen on the concrete, you keep the helmets on. It's just like some badass, like the lights, just they got the helmets going on. But
they're gonna break their hands and won't be able to drive next.
Yeah, I know. It was like that one football fight. What was it? Was it like AJ Green and somebody in the NFL? They were fighting.
Yeah,
I think it was AJ who was punching like the guy's helmet, and it's like
Portland Finnegan and Andre Johnson had that situation. Puka Nacua threw a punch. I mean, there's so many of them. And that was one thing when I played football. Our coach was like, if you started swinging at someone who had a helmet, he would make you run twice as much as the other guy who may have been in the scuffle. But he's like, you're just stupid. You're stupid.
It's like
even remember when Boyer did it to Newman? He ran up to Ryan Newman's window and just started. He threw like double-handed punching into Newman's at his helmet.
Yeah.
Back in 2020. Yeah, I do remember that. Or was that 2019 or something? Yeah, it was like the All-Star race. Ryan Newman and Clint Boyer. And Boyer walks up there and just starts punching Newman's helmet. It was that was funny, but that's not something that we
probably didn't want to take Newman outside of the car.
Yeah, you don't want to scrap with Ryan Newman, I guess, on some concrete. Probably won't go well for you. But gosh, but yeah, that's a funny topic. I'm sure we can keep on detailing on that in the future. Boxing ring, hopefully for NASCAR. We'll get that in touch. As much as we continue to grow this show, maybe they'll consider ideas a little bit more.
There you go.
I think they already do for the radio. I mean, we got a lot of great, especially Coach Brian. Like we got a lot of great ideas over there. He brought some good ones in too when it comes to fights. So I think
we need to get a spreadsheet going of all the ideas that we come up with on Mondays with you.
We do. I got to work on that. So I'll work on that. That'll be a goal. We'll get all of our ideas out there on some paper or something like that. But David, I know you got a busy day. I'm going to let you run. And thank you so much for coming on here. And this ain't going to be the last time we'll have you on here. But like I said, we're going to try to make this this show is going to be hopefully a weekly thing. So periodically here and there, and maybe when we want to talk about some football too and stuff like that, we'll get you on here, my friend. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I know we'll chat soon.
Absolutely. Hey, Chris, RJ, thank you guys so much for having me on. You'll have a great rest of your afternoon, and go Lightning, man. Big win last night against the Avs.
Yes, sir. Go Lightning, my friend. David, you have a wonderful day. We love sports down here in Tampa Bay, and I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Hey, y'all too. Love, man.
Yes, sir. All right, and that is David Hayes. Thank you so much for coming on here and joining us. And Chris, I'll have you. We're gonna wrap up here. I'll have you stick around for this announcement that I'm gonna make here real quick to close the show. I promised it at 1:50, but we ran a little bit long, so we'll run the announcement here, and then we'll wrap up. So, as a lot of people know that have followed my page for a while, that have the iRacing service as well. I like to run a fun event every year called the Daytona Charity Shootout. Been running it for 6 times now. It started back during the pandemic in 2020, where I didn't have iRacing, but I saw a lot of people doing cool stuff on it, and I kind of wanted to, be a part of that. And we made an event over in 2020. This is when I didn't have too many connections at all in the industry. Maybe people that just followed the page, and we start an event, and we get all these people out there. We had, AJ McCarron from the NFL out there. We get all these NASCAR drivers in there. Michael McDowell's out there. James Hinchcliffe came out of race. There were so many amazing names. Like Rajah Carut's been there a lot of the years. Daniel Dye, Ryan Vargas that have raced so many years. And we're going to bring it back. The sixth annual Daytona Charity Shootout is going to return this year. It's going to be on January 4th, Saturday night. We don't have an exact start time yet, but we'll figure that out. And we're going to come back once again with the amazing people at Turn 200 iRacing on YouTube. They're absolutely incredible. If you're a person that tunes in and watches, iRacing races on YouTube or Twitch, wherever you find your races to watch, the Turn 200 guys are absolutely incredible at what they do. I've had the pleasure of being able, when I can maintain a stable internet connection or not have an injury, I've had the pleasure of racing in some of those series that they air, more specifically the Venom Truck Series. I've had a lot of fun racing in there when I'm able to maintain a stable internet connection, and they do a tremendous job airing that. They just finished up season 8 of the Venom Truck Series. But for the last 2 years, we've had the Daytona Charity Shootout on Turn 200. It's been incredible. Tommy Cook and Matt Williamson do an incredible job at presenting the race. You see the picture here. I believe the bottom one was from last year. The top one was from 2 years ago. You see Ryan Vargas is leading in that top one, and behind him is Lightning McQueen. I won't explain the full thing now, but we had Lightning McQueen in the show 2 years ago. We'll see who comes in this year, but nonetheless, it's going to be a lot of fun. We always take the Xfinity cars out to Daytona, and we'll do about a 70-lap race. The winner of the race gets to pick where all the donated money. Everybody will have the chance. We'll get, partner with some brands. We'll get donations from people, to raise some money for charity. And the winner of the race gets to pick what charity all of that money goes to. So we've had some incredible donations over the past few years. I know Dean Thompson won back in 2021, and we got money donated to Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund. So that was very awesome to do. We've had Cesar Baccarelis partnered with the event in past years, like Alpha Prime has sponsored. So that's also been really cool. But nonetheless, it's just a great thing that brings a lot of people together. We're doing it for a great cause. And honestly, the funnest part about this, Chris, is I don't know if you've seen any of these events, but on Friday night, one thing that I introduced and have done every year since, we have what is called the open qualifiers, where everybody, because this event on Saturday night, it's people in the industry are locked in. People that have raced in the past are locked in. Also, Venom Truck Series drivers that have won a race in the past season will all be locked into the main event. But on Friday, anybody can join. It's open qualifiers. It's like heat races. Usually it ends up being like 4 or 5 heat races, and the winner of each heat race advances to the main event. And so if you want to just imagine what a heat race looks like at Daytona, like 7 laps, no cautions, it's probably what you're getting in your brain, the imagination of what that is. So that's the funnest part, honestly, of the whole weekend. The funniest part is watching those open qualifiers and watching people out there sometimes race clean, but also destroy the heck out of each other. And sometimes there's only like 2 cars that make it to the line. But nonetheless, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to, just over a month, bring this back for the 6th time. It's already been a 6th time we're bringing it back. The Daytona Charity Shootout, but for the 3rd time on Turn 200. So, Chris, I don't know if you have an iRacing rig. I don't think you have. You never mentioned that, so I don't think you don't have iRacing, do you?
if I can get my hands on one, if I can borrow one from someone, maybe.
Yeah, well, it doesn't even have to be a rig. I mean, shoot, I'm sitting here. I got a wheel that I got on Amazon for like $30 and my monitor, and that's it. And
Is that
pedals.
really all it takes?
Yeah, I mean, some people, I mean, that's the beauty of iRacing. Some people got super serious, crazy rigs, which certainly help you. And some people just have these, so they might not be the best like me, but you can come out there and just do what you can and race and have fun. So, and it's Daytona, it's Daytona. You're gonna ride around, you're gonna have fun. We'll probably have like 2 fast repairs or something, which means if you wreck, your day's not over, you just reset. So, but nonetheless, it's a lot of fun. If you do get your hands on one, welcome to the show. Then you are certainly in the main event, obviously, on Saturday, and you can race against, I'm sure Ryan Vargas will be coming back, Raja, a lot of the familiar faces we see every year. I'll hopefully be able to put together an entry list here in the next few weeks. But yeah, big shout out Turn 200 iRacing for the 3rd consecutive year on their channel. Super glad to be partnering with them for this. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I love doing just some organized events, doing it for a good cause, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up as soon as we get off of here. How I can get my hands on maybe a beginner iRacing wheel, because I honestly never knew you could do it that cheap and simple. That does sound like a lot of fun. Like Timmy Hill, doesn't he only have like a wheel?
Yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah, Timmy Hill has basically the same setup as I had, or at least what he had during like the pro invitational days. That's pretty much what he had.
Yeah, and he's a beast at iRacing. So
he is a dog. He is. Yeah. He is crazy. So that's always been fun to see. But yeah, I cannot wait for this Daytona charity shootout. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to wrap up the show here. I can only sit for so much longer with this damn injury. So I'm gonna get myself up and moving. But it's been a lot of fun to bring this little test inaugural episode here. Glad to have David Hayes on. Chris, glad that you have joined us. Next week should be a lot of fun. I know Kyle Weatherman, we're finalizing to bring him on the show next week, hopefully with some positive news regarding his next season. Chris Wright possibly coming on next week as well. Cesar Baccarella, like I said, Tony Breidinger will be on the show eventually. We got a lot of fun names that'll be coming on the show this off season, and some names that we don't even know could possibly come on the show as well. So anything you want to say before we sign off here, Chris?
No, I think that about covers it. Christmas is coming up. If anyone wants to get me a $3,000 iRacing rig, by all means, I am accepting.
He is accepting. Yeah. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving for sure. Thanksgiving coming up in a few days. And next time we see you, you'll be stuffed with a lot of food and hopefully great thanks as well. So, as Thanksgiving rolls up, thankful for everybody that tunes into this and follows the page every single day to make this possible. And we will see you guys when we see you guys the next time. Hopefully a week's time. I'll have that out hopefully in the next few days once I get my schedule kind of nailed down for next week. So thank you all, and we will see you guys next week.